Okay, so for my project, I have chosen to do the theme structure. I have looked into a couple different things around structure. I've looked into Kirsty Whitlock and her design. I've looked into maps, and that's why I looked into Kirsty Whitlock, because instead of newspapers I could do maps. I've looked into different kinds of maps, so like board game maps and stuff like that. I've made a contextual research. I looked at lots of different books about this thing called the Bauhaus. It's an architectural designer from the 1930s, and he did this thing called the Bauhaus Theatre, where they designed costumes for plays. So I just did some extra research into that. So for my artist research, I've looked into 6 different people. I've looked into Walter Gropius. He was the founder of the Bauhaus movement. He was an architecture and an artist, designing loads of different buildings in the 1920s and 30s. I've also looked at Piet Mondrian. I looked at him because of his primary colours, which Walter Gropius also used, all the primary colours, so I just wanted to kind of go down that route as well. And kind of the same thing with Hans Meyer, because he has a very similar art style, so I thought I'd just stay on track with that. Here are the other artists that I looked into. I looked into Ed Fairburn. He draws on top of maps, and because I was looking down, that was like my starting point for after I picked structure, I looked into maps, so I thought that was a good person to look into. Lothar, I looked into him, and also Oscar. Oscar was the one who created the costumes for the Bauhaus circus. And these were some of his very first models. This one down here, this was his first ever model from the 1921. Yeah, that was made out of wood, I think. So yeah, I'm very much looking down like the sort of the costume kind of lane. I created some samples. So for this one up here, I used lino printing. I cut out my own lino, inspired by Piet Mondrian. Then also I did some weaving, which was inspired by Hans Meyer. And then I used a sewing machine to do some embroidery onto a map. And also this one down here, this was one of the costumes that Walter Gropius made for the Bauhaus circus, and I thought it was really cool, and I took some inspiration from the balls on the dress, and I created some of my own balls. I was just trying to figure out what medium I should use, so I used Mod Rock and then painted them. Also during my contextual research, I found in one of the Bauhaus books lots of different colourful shapes, so I thought that linked quite well. For my primary research, I took some photos of some different architecture buildings to go off of Walter Gropius's buildings. I took photos of ones that had like quite pointy, and then I found another artist called Dave Furler. He is also an architecture drawing. I found his art like just on the street, he was just selling it, and I thought it looked really cool, so, and it linked to my architecture, so I took some photos of that. And then I also went to Central train station, and I found some maps in there on leaflets, which was also what I embroidered onto for my samples. I just, yeah. And then that.